Jim Hummel of the Hummel Report. Jim, question for Mr. Venerini, please.
Mr. Venerini, you had mentioned your popular cable TV show. I've been a guest on that show many times.
I don't know if it's popular or not because I'm only drawing nothing.
Well, as half of Rhode Island has probably been on your show at one point or another. So you want to go from an hour with Bob to 4 years with Bob at this point.
Exactly.
Let me ask you, we've talked a lot about the lieutenant governor's race and what the primary duty is. Can you envision yourself being governor of this state of Rhode Island?
Yeah, I can.
And why should the voters envision you that way?
Because if you're looking at the three candidates, I don't see any where anyone has that much of an advantage over what I do. What I bring to the table is a variety. First of all, the pulse of Rhode Island, because I deal with everybody from the bellhop to the hotel owner. You know, I know a lot of people. I deal with a lot of people from all facts of life, and I understand what they want, what they need, and the governor isn't one person anyway. It's not like a dictatorship. You have a staff. You have people that would handle each department. It's not like I have to run the whole show myself.
Lieutenant Governor?
I absolutely believe that any Rhode Islander can be prepared, but of these three Rhode Islanders, I am the most prepared to become the governor. My experience in government, but as well my experience before government. My experience running a family business with my brothers and sisters, a third-generation family business. These are all things, our life experiences, our work experiences, but even more, my experience working through the complex issues facing our state, both inside and outside of government.
Mr. Healy.
Well, I think my experiences in the past running for governor, I had to put forth several platform documents which clearly articulated a view for the state of Rhode Island. I think that those documents still ring true because I don't necessarily change my position based on an election result or what have you. So I think that I'm well suited, not only in terms of policy platform, but I also have the background. I think that could easily do that job.
Thank you. Question for our Lieutenant Governor. Some have complained that it's not tremendously easy to get a hold of you during our time. I know that it's been a challenge to get a hold of you in our newsroom. One of our talk show hosts reports to me trying 12 times to get a hold of you to get on the radio. How come not more accessible, Lieutenant Governor?
I'm very accessible to the public and very accessible to the newsroom. But there are times when I talk radio is quite different from the news. And I go out of my way to be accessible. Steve Clampkin was just in here, actually. And I have seen other of your news people. I was with 12 and 6. I'm often out at public events. I've been at 3 press conferences in the last 3 days where I'm very accessible to the press and even more accessible to the public. You know, I am out on people's doorsteps, knocking on doors, talking to people, in and out of small businesses, at public forums where the public is. Those are the people I am accountable to, and I make sure I answer their questions, and certainly in my office respond to them as quickly as possible.
Mr. Healy.
Well, I think that part of the duty of a public servant is to actually answer to the public. And I think that certainly in my capacity, I'm out and I'm with the public and I'm listening to them and I'm listening to their concerns. But you need to find time to explain your positions, not just give a news bite, a sound bite to a newscast or what have you. And for me, certainly if I served as the role of Lieutenant Governor, I think that people clearly know the persona and know who I am so that they could come up and articulate their problems. Most of the people in Rhode Island could not tell you the name of the lieutenant governor or what the lieutenant governor looked like in the last 3 or 5 even.
Mr. Venerini.
Yeah, I agree with that. I haven't, other than this election year, I've never seen I've never even met the lieutenant governor, I don't think. And I don't think anybody at this table, including everybody here, has been more accessible or more visible in the state of Rhode Island than myself. And, you know, I've run the Toys for Tots event for 17 years at the mall, and I've never seen either one of these candidates here at that event. Well, you know, may not be their event, but it's some event. It's a public event, and all the other events that I go to, I don't see any of them other than during this election campaign. They're very, very non-visible. And as far as transparency is concerned, the RI government website doesn't list.
Thank you, Mr. Venerini. I'm going to hold you there just to follow up. I mean, do you not, when people are critical of you, do you not? I think we're referring to when talk show hosts are critical of you, cut them off.
So no,
no?
Absolutely not.
That's the perception anyway.
Right. So I've been regularly on Dan York's show. I was on. I spoke with John DePietro just a few weeks ago. I'm very accessible to the news staff. I will say that talk radio often makes it very clear who they're supporting before you call them up. And, that is very different to me than speaking with a news person. I always reply to news calls.
Okay, fair enough. Arlene Violet, question for Lieutenant Governor.
Yes, on your way here, one of the talk show hosts, Mr. Cianci, was told by Ron St. Pierre that he had called your campaign manager and that you could not come on the show because you were booked solid at high rises from 2 to 6 p.m. Mr. Cianci noted that that just goes to prove in a way how little that the lieutenant governor has to do because you will be at these places from 2 to 6 every day. I guess my question to you, I'd like your response to that observation, but in addition to that is, people regard it as a parking space or a parking spot. I think Mr. Healy has talked about that, because what happens is you're paid really to stay in that spot and then run later for a higher office. So in addressing the parking spot, will you put that to rest? Have you decided that this is your final elected office, or would you consider running for another elected post?
So I am running for this post right now because I believe it is where I can and will continue to make a difference.
But do you still have aspirations for beyond lieutenant governor?
I have aspirations for 12 days from now and want to work very hard. What I really want to do...
But you're open to running, right, for another post?
Why I have run for lieutenant governor and running again is because I believe deeply, and I came into public service not for anything other than to make a difference for the people that I serve.
So you would be open
And my
potentially
focus-
for another position, yes or no?
My goal is to take on this one and make sure that I do whatever I can to make a difference
So you
for the
wouldn't
people
rule
of
it
the
out?
state.
You
I
wouldn't
don't think
rule out
any of the
another
three
run?
of us would rule it out.
Okay.
Mr. Healy.
I would
Mr.
rule it
Healy.
out, and I make it very clear right now, I'm not a candidate for the 2nd District next election. I think that it's clearly, if you get elected to an office, you serve the office, and you serve the office diligently, and I certainly would not seek higher, especially higher office in Washington. I would eventually, if I do get elected as lieutenant governor, I would consider running for governor when the office came up. But I would not ever consider federal office.
Parking spot, Mr. Venturini?
Well, I don't even know what a parking spot is. It's a
That you
side of-
stay there,
I know,
get
yeah,
paid,
I
you
know,
campaign
I
for
know.
another spot.
No, I have no intention or interest in running for governor.
Or any other higher office?
I don't know. Maybe I might consider running if this doesn't work. Maybe, but not if I won this office. I wouldn't.
Okay.
We turn to Jim Hummel of the Hummel Report. A question for Mr. Healy. Jim.
Mr. Healy, I'm curious about the real practical effect. Let's go into the scenario that you win November 3rd and you take office in January. I remember when you announced for governor initially you were going to run in this cycle. You announced from Uruguay. You have
No, I think you're wrong on that.
where you have property out in
I
South
do have
America.
property in
All right,
South
and you
America.
spent some time there.
I do.
So let's talk about the practicalities if there are emergencies. Does this curb your lifestyle? Does it
Yes.
keep you from going out of state? You basically have to change. What's the practicalities in emergencies? Do you own a cell phone?
I do.
And I understand it's a track phone. Is that right?
I believe it is.
Would it have international minutes on it?
It does.
Okay, so you're all set by cell phone, but are you going to change a little bit? And let's talk about that, but the second part of that question is, let's talk about the timetable. In order to eliminate the job, you have to go through what process and how long do you think that's going to take before voters have a chance to say yes or no?
Well, I think what happens is once elected, the General Assembly has to enact legislation, in essence, put a constitutional amendment before the people. As you know, constitutional amendments have to be voted on in a general election, so that would be a 2-year cycle out. I would have to serve the first 2 years of the lieutenant governor clearly, and I think it would probably take 4 years, because I think that any constitutional change should put the power in a statewide elected office.
As for your lifestyle, that changes in terms of traveling?
My lifestyle would change in terms of traveling, because I would have to be here for obvious reasons, but I think that I can transact my business and do what I have to do outside of the country as well.
What if the General Assembly doesn't put that bill in for you?
I run for re-election.
Okay. Mr. Venturini.
As far as him or me, you're talking about.
So it's your chance to weigh in on what Jim asked.
I don't understand. That was one of my questions to Bob.
Do you drop the cable show or do you keep it?
No, I keep the cable show. If I can, and if it's beneficial to the state, because I think what I do promotes the state as well, if not better than most things that happen in the state, in a positive vein. I think a lot of the stuff I do, or just about everything I do is positive.
Just a
in
quick
nature.
follow-up. Does the FCC, does cable exempt you? You're still doing your cable show,
Right, but
Is
I
that
have-
an unfair advantage on the airwaves?
No, because I've avoided this politics totally. I haven't talked about it on my show.
Lieutenant Governor.
So I think it's really important that Mr. Healy says he's running and the goal will be just to get rid of the office. But he's been talking about this goal for, I think, 5 election cycles now. And except for running for office, I have not seen anything that has moved to change the Constitution. If this is the ultimate goal of his run for office and could actually mean 8 years in office if the legislature doesn't listen, then I really question how successful he's going to be. He has not been successful yet, and I question whether just getting elected into office is somehow miraculously going to change that.
I think I have to rebut that because in the past I have had my representative, Mr. Malik, submit legislation to do changes in the Constitution and also to do the changes that would even consider the bracketing of the office. I think it was introduced in the Senate, I believe, by Paul Maurer at one point in time. I'm not sure on that because I didn't talk directly to Paulie. But I think that is certainly not true that I did not do anything to eliminate this office.
But what is going to be different?
But I
if
think it's
it
not
changes?
true that what you're saying. I mean, you
But
can say what you want to say. It's just not true.
Mr. Healy,
Yeah.
did you work with Heidi Rogers to steal that primary
Steal the
from the
primary.
Republicans? Well, I mean, they could, when the winner drops out 4 days after
There
winning the
was an
election.
understanding there. There was no doubt about that we were both talking about the same philosophical foundation, the idea that this office was a waste of $1 million a year of Rhode Island tax dollars. And the issue was, at the end of, in fact, I presented a letter to the Republican convention. In that letter, it said that I would seek their endorsement, not their nomination. When Heidi jumped into the race with the same philosophy as I had, then I thought, okay, let's pull back my request for an endorsement by them. And then in that letter of withdrawal, what I did indicate to them was, after the primary, let's sit down and talk, because a 3-way race will never, ever provide either the Republican or an independent candidate enough votes to overcome a master lever situation. And so at that meeting, at the end of the primary, I sat down with Heidi, prepared to withdraw from the race myself. If they could think in their minds that they were going to fund her name recognition campaign, fund a campaign that would bring her to a level that would make it so that she would have a race. And she decided that I was a better candidate.
Mr. Venerini, what do you think about the affair?
I was shocked this morning to hear Joe Trillo on Dan York talking about that very thing. First of all, I was shocked that what happened, and I was also shocked to find out when I asked you when you knew about that little deal that she was going to drop out 3 days after she won, and when you told me that you found out or decided that day, that I have trouble believing that then, I have trouble believing that now.
I stood there willing to withdraw from the race myself if they were going to support her candidacy.
Well,
and additionally, the other thing that needs to be said is, if had Mr. Capstein won the Democratic primary, I don't think it would have been a situation where that would have been a removal, because all candidates would have been working from the same book of withdrawal from the.
Yeah, but he wasn't going to withdraw.
No, he was going to eliminate. He was going to eliminate the office if the General Assembly or the governor didn't give him a
Lieutenant
portfolio.
Governor, can you weigh in?
I have to say, 17,000 people voted in that primary.
Right.
And maybe there were a few people in the Republican Party who were aware of this deal. 17,000 people voted, and 3 days later, their candidate who won withdrew. And where were they? They had no nominee there. This, to me, reeks of the kind of insider deal that we see
That the
too often in Rhode
Democrats-
Hold on,
Island.
Mr. Hillman.
And I think, actually, that Mr. Healy owes an apology to those people who voted in that primary.
Well, I think that the Republican and Democratic primaries themselves are ways and mechanisms for the parties to nominate their particular candidates. Those are internal affairs. Just because the state observes them and regulates them does not make them elections. It makes them party primaries. Some states do it by caucus. Some states do it by just sheer nomination of people. And so I think that this is an issue that 10%...